You're listening to Podcasting Up an Octave, a podcast by Sonivia, the podcasting agency that believes that women and queer people deserve to take up space in the podcasting industry because our thoughts, voices, and stories matter. Here you'll learn how to make a dope podcast that inspires, educates, converts, and most importantly, makes your voice shine. I'm your host, Ruth Spence, and I'm here to take podcasting up an octave. Hello, and welcome back to Podcasting Up an Octave. I'm feeling a little spicy today, so I want to share with you some of my hot takes about podcasting in 2025. If you are a creator who's feeling overwhelmed or over it, or just need a little bit of clarity and real talk, this episode is for you. So I am here to cause a little bit of chaos by sharing some of my takes that are, I guess, maybe unconventional. I don't really think that they're that far-fetched or that wild, but, maybe this ruffles some feathers. Maybe it'll set you free. Either way, all of my hot takes come from a place of love. Take what feels good and leave the rest. So let's get into it. I think that overposting is overrated. And what I mean by that is this desire to post 3 times a week, twice a week, even once a week for some shows is not right. If you are a podcast that relies on high production value, lots of research, there is nothing wrong with dropping every other week. With giving people the breathing space to look forward to something in the meantime, that is allowed, especially if you are doing really long episodes or, like I said, really in-depth episodes. And if you're doing it by yourself, give yourself the space to create and to enter that creative mindset without it turning into an every week grind. Weekly or more than weekly episodes are great if you have the capacity. But if you are sacrificing joy to crank out episodes, there is a disconnect. At the end of the day, especially if podcasting is not your job, it should be fun, it should light you up, and it should feel good to create. My next hot take is that you don't need a niche, you need a perspective. A powerful POV is going to beat a tidy category. And I know that this is counterintuitive, that's why it's a hot take. To a lot of the, niche down, really get your hyper focus that we hear in marketing and in a lot of the conversations around podcasting. I think that having that powerful perspective is more important than fitting neatly into a nice box. And I think that genre mixing can be really powerful. Look at rom-coms. That's a genre blend. Something like, mom life meets marketing is always going to be less compelling than saying something like, I'm here to dismantle the patriarchy while still making bank. Like that tells me something. That lets me know exactly what it is. And it still can give off that, I'm a mom who talks about marketing. It could still be exactly that. But the way that you phrase it frees you from having to stick into that box and lets you make something that feels really authentic and is presented in a way that's so uniquely you. Listeners are drawn to your voice and to your values. They also don't fit neatly into a nice little box. Yes, obviously, I'm a mom and a podcast professional. I'm also someone who loves to be fit and in the gym, and that's something that I could talk about for hours. So finding people who speak to those different facets of myself is so much more interesting to me than just someone who is completely boxed in. I'm only here to talk about this one thing. I'm here to be this monolithic creature. I don't want that personally. I want someone who sees me as a whole person, especially because that makes it so much more applicable to my lifestyle. What my day-to-day looks like is very different than someone who works a traditional 9-to-5. As an entrepreneur, I have more flexibility. I also have the burdens of doing taxes and stuff. There are a lot of custom situations that don't apply just when you look at the niche as a whole. And so I think that it can be really powerful if you can find how to really get specific based on who you are as a person. My next hot take is that growth is not always the goal. There are some seasons, and I don't mean seasons of your podcast, I mean seasons of your content creation. Like, not this is season 4, I just mean this season that you're in currently in your life. Some seasons are for nurturing your current audience, for building those relationships and not chasing new ones. There are times to reap and times to sow, as it were. And I think that is something that we so overlook when we're always talking about building your audience, growing your audience. But if you're not nurturing the people who are already there, you're not building that connection. And obviously you don't want things to get stagnant, but building deeper relationships, building community with your listeners is as valuable as finding new ones. And that's true whether you're just like a hobby podcaster or if this is part of your business. Like, people are going to hire people who they love and trust and respect. And people are going to stick around and, develop that give and take relationship with their favorite hobby podcasters, send in stories, join a Patreon, whatever that looks like, with people who they feel seen by. And so, sometimes it's great to really try and cast that net wide, see who comes in. And then other times it's really important to get intimate. And I don't think that you have to broadcast that and be like, hello, listeners, this is my nurturing phase. But I think, where you put your energy and where you put your efforts is also very valuable. Keep in mind that a small and obsessed audience can be enough to be life-changing for your podcast. There are clients that I talk with who I'm like, okay, your goal is not to become a podcast with 1 billion listens. Your goal is to become someone who their podcast self-sustains their business. And if you're doing that with 50 listeners, congrats, you've made it. You've reached your goal. I think so often we get stuck in this like, oh, this is the top 1% podcast and they have a cajillion listeners and they're so awesome. And that's great. And for some people, that is the goal. For some people, if you're, pursuing traditional sponsorships or something like that, you want to be listened to by as many people as possible. But if you are someone who is incredibly niche, who has a very small target demographic, reaching more of those people means that you're reaching a bigger percentage of your demographic. If my goal audience is women between 25 and 50, that population is like 1 billion people, right? Like, that's so many. And so if I'm reaching even 500,000 of them, that's awesome. But 500,000 out of 1 billion is still chump change. But if my thing is like, I want to specifically talk to dog groomers in Tennessee, well, there might only be 350 of those. And if I've got 189 people listening, that hits a lot different. And so, when you're thinking about what are my numbers, how do I value my metrics, what analytics are important to me, consider who you're really trying to talk to and consider what the relationship you're building with those listeners is like. My next hot take is that monetizing too soon can backfire. If your content is still evolving, so is your audience. Wait until you have clarity on what your listeners are asking for or needing before you start pitching your own products or before you start reaching out to sponsors. You will quickly find out when it's time what people are looking for. It doesn't make a lot of sense to partner with like Indeed if you're not talking to people who are hiring. Like, if your target audience is like stay-at-home moms, they're not hiring people on Indeed. You also, if you are an entrepreneur and you're using your podcast to sell your own products or services, make sure that your offers are aligned AF. That way you don't have to push. You don't have to feel like you're selling. It's something that feels good to offer because it's something that your audience is asking you for. That makes it easier to ask, and it makes it easier for them to say yes. My final take is that you don't have to do it alone. DIYing is incredible. I am a DIY girly, but there comes a moment where you go, I think I've DIY'd enough. I think I'm DIY done. And, that's when your podcast starts to feel like a burden. And there is absolutely no shame in asking for help. And that help, I want to be very specific because I know you're like, oh, I know an ask is coming. Sure, yeah, we'll get there. But your help doesn't have to come from a paid professional. Your help can come from your AI helping you organize your thoughts. Your help can come from having a community of podcasters that you can bounce ideas off of, trade gear with, talk about, well, what's working for you? What's not? How does the industry function for you right now? building that community. Help doesn't just have to be transactional. Help doesn't have to come from a paid professional. Help can literally come from Reddit. I love Reddit. Reddit has helped me with so many podcasting questions over the years that, help can look like a lot of things. Podcasting is a lot. And when it starts to feel like a burden, you very quickly stop creating. There is no reason to just keep forcing your way through, muscling through, grinding it out if it's not feeding you. And finding community, finding support, finding help helps to lubricate those gears and keep things running smoothly. And yes, of course, here comes the closing call to action. If you are looking for support, or maybe my hot takes have made you question everything, I'm here to help you untangle it. I've got my Day of Voxer offer. It's 24 hours of strategy and support right in your pocket, like having your producer bestie walk you through all of the podcasting pitfalls that you might find. Link is, of course, in the show notes. But all that's to say, find your people, whether it's me, whether it's someone on Reddit, find your people, feel good in your podcast, and feel free to break the freaking rules. Like, the rules are there as bumpers. Like, you are bowling, these are your bumpers. They keep you on track. But this is, at the end of the day, your show, and you get to decide what feels good to create and how it feels good to create. Don't box yourself in with the pressure to post 6 times a week. Don't box yourself in with a niche. Don't box yourself in with the comparison syndrome where you're like, oh my God, this podcast is huge and mine's so tiny. Don't box yourself in with feeling like you need sponsors, and don't box yourself into isolation. You've got this. You can come hang out with me on the socials. I'm on Instagram and Threads at Sonivia Studios. You can go check out my beautiful new website, sonivia.com. If you checked out my website like anytime a couple months ago, go look at it. She's so cute now. We're in our glow up phase. And you can email me directly at rue@sonivia.com. I'm going to go hang out with my kid now. Thanks for helping me take podcasting up an octave.